When we think about modern engineering, we think about some pretty incredible stuff. We've landed on the moon, we've built skyscrapers that literally disappear into the clouds, and we've tunneled under entire oceans. But there's this one ancient structure, sitting out there in the desert, that still makes the best engineers in the world just kind of scratch their heads: the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's a 4,500-year-old puzzle that really challenges everything we think we know. Okay, let's just dive right into this with a really powerful idea from the archaeologist Zahi Hawass. And this quote, it just nails it. It reframes the pyramid from just being a building to being the project that forged an entire civilization. I mean, this was their version of a moonshot. So that brings us to the big question, right? If the ancient Egyptians could pull this off thousands of years ago, surely we could do it today with all our tech. No problem. Well, the answer is a lot more complicated and honestly way more expensive than you could possibly imagine. So let's actually run the numbers. First things first, we really need to wrap our heads around the unbelievable scale of this thing. We're not just talking about putting up a tall building, we are talking about constructing a man-made mountain basically from scratch. This slide really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? I mean, a 40-story building is impressive for sure. But now imagine one that covers the same area as 10 football fields and weighs as much as 6 million cars. All of it built from 2.3 million individual stone blocks. The scale is it's mind-boggling. All right, let's start building our modern pyramid literally from the ground up. And the very first and maybe the most critical step is creating a base that can actually hold it all. And here's the thing. You can't just plop this thing down anywhere. The ground underneath it has to be absolutely perfect. There's actually a nearby pyramid, they call it the bent pyramid, that serves as a perfect warning. Its foundation was flawed, and because of that, the whole structure started to, well, bend. Get this part wrong and your multi-billion-dollar project, yeah, it's basically a giant sinkhole. So, step one, you gotta get the land. Now, assuming you could even get permission to build something this massive on the Giza Plateau today, just the land and all the legal permits would set us back an estimated $120 million. And we haven't even picked up a shovel yet. The ancient Egyptians had this ingenious method for leveling the base using a grid of water channels. It's brilliant. Today, though, we'd bring in the big guns, laser leveling systems, GPS-guided bulldozers, all to make sure that surface is perfectly flat. And that kind of precision is not cheap. Modern seismic scanning to make sure the bedrock is solid, plus all the laser leveling work, that tacks on another $5 million. And why so precise? Well, think about it. If you're off by just 1 millimeter at the base, by the time you get to the top, you'd have a lean of almost 15 centimeters. No good. But here is where modern engineering would really take it to a whole other level. See, we wouldn't just trust the bedrock. To guarantee this thing is still standing in another 4,500 years, we'd build a massive mat of steel-reinforced concrete right underneath the whole thing. And that foundation alone, we're talking 500,000 tons of concrete, would cost an absolutely staggering $400 million. That's the budget of an entire modern skyscraper, and it's just for our foundation. So let's pause for a second here. We've already spent over $500 million, and we have not laid a single stone. This is just the cost of getting the ground ready. Okay, groundwork is done. Now for what might be the biggest logistical puzzle of all. How do you get your hands on 2.3 million giant blocks of stone? I mean, seriously, just think about that for a second. How do you even begin to acquire that much material? Every single one of these blocks is roughly the size of a large SUV. It is an absolute logistical nightmare. This chart really puts the weight into perspective. The Great Pyramid is 12 times heavier than the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. The sheer mass of the material is just unlike anything built in our modern era. It's not even close. So to get this done in, say, 5 years, you'd need a massive industrial operation. First, the saws. We're talking 250 industrial diamond wire saws running 24/7. That's $25 million. Then you got to power those things nonstop. That's another $155 million. And then transporting the heaviest granite blocks all the way from the quarry 900 kilometers away, that's a cool $200 million. But all of that is completely dwarfed by the cost of the raw stone itself. 2.3 million blocks would cost a flat $1 billion. And just like that, boom, our total cost has absolutely exploded. We've now blown right past $2 billion, and we still just have a giant pile of rocks sitting on the ground. All right, the site is prepped, the materials are on site. Now we face what might be the single biggest engineering puzzle of this entire project. How do you lift all of it into place? Here's the core issue. It's simple physics, really. The longer a crane's arm gets, the less weight it can lift. We need to hoist blocks that weigh up to 80 tons, all the way up to a height of 147 meters. There is no single crane on Earth that can do that. It doesn't exist. So what's the solution? Well, it's a super complex, custom-engineered network of massive tower cranes. These things would have to be built on site, and then repeatedly taken apart and reassembled higher and higher as the pyramid itself gets taller. The rental and maintenance for that kind of operation over 5 years, at least $300 million. And of course, you need people. A project of this scale would demand a minimum of 3,000 highly skilled workers. Engineers, masons, crane operators, you name it. Their salaries, insurance, and all the logistics over 5 years, that'll be another $400 million. Okay, so after years of planning and backbreaking construction, our pyramid is almost done. But to truly replicate the original, we need one last, incredible, breathtaking element. This is what's so fascinating. The sandy-colored stepped pyramid we all recognize today, that's not what it looks like originally. Not even close. It was actually covered in smooth, highly polished white limestone. When the sun hit it, it would have been visible from miles around, just gleaming like this giant jewel in the desert. Restoring that brilliant white casing would mean we need another 115,000 perfectly cut blocks of rare Titra limestone. Quarrying them, transporting them, and fitting them with millimeter precision, yeah, that adds a final $250 million to our budget. So, after all this work, after about 8 years of construction, it's finally done. We've paid for the land, the foundation, the materials, the transport, the insane machinery, all the labor, and that brilliant finishing. Are you ready for the final number? The grand total comes to a minimum of $2.95 billion. And I have to stress, that is a conservative estimate. It doesn't include things like road taxes for thousands of trucks, or the cost of building a dedicated power plant just to run the quarry, which a project like this would almost certainly need. Just to put that number into perspective, for roughly the same price, you could build the most expensive sports stadium in the world, an entire artificial island like the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai, or a massive natural gas plant. You know, projects that generate revenue and serve a very clear modern function. And that right there brings us to the final and most crucial point. We could, theoretically, gather the resources and the technology to do this, but the real barrier isn't the money or the engineering, it's purpose. In a world that is so driven by return on investment, what possible reason could we have for dedicating a decade and billions of dollars to build a tomb for a king? The ancients, they had a motive that went beyond balance sheets, a motive that transcended generations. And maybe that's the one thing we just can't replicate.